Welcome to HSBC Global Viewpoint, the podcast series that brings together business leaders and industry experts to explore the latest global insights, trends, and opportunities. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with new episodes. Thanks for listening, and now on to today's show.
Hello from Hong Kong and welcome to Under the Banyan Tree. I'm Herald the head of Asian Equity Strategy here at HSBC.
And I'm Fred Newman, Chief Asia Economist, currently poring over yet another stellar collection of facts and figures compiled by my esteemed co-host.
That's very kind of you to say, Fred. My team and I have been working very hard to put this compilation together. I'm going to let you pick your favorites and then we can see how they help us put Asian markets and economics in context.
Exactly. That's what we do here on the podcast. From HSBC Global Investment Research, you're listening to Under the Banyan Tree. So, Herald, a great number of statistics here that you dug out again, I have to say. Mm-hmm. And one that stuck out for me was you label it the Great Mall of China, quote unquote, because that's not actually the name of the mall. But there is a shopping mall in Shenzhen, which is just across the border from Hong Kong in mainland China. And you say that this is the most visited mall in all of mainland China. How many visitors go there every single day?
Yeah, I believe it is the most visited mall in all of China. It might be that from one day to another mall somewhere else does a little bit better. But there are 80,000 people going to that mall every day. It's a massive mall, of course. That's the average of a whole European mid-sized city that goes there. But imagine this. The number of people that go to that mall every day is the same number of people that visit the FIFA World Cup final. So that's about 80,000 people as well. And they have that every day.
And you say, actually, that amounts to 28 million visitors in 2024, which is actually more people than visited Niagara Falls over the past year, and presumably many more than got married in Niagara Falls.
And many more than would get married in Niagara Falls. But Niagara Falls is maybe not the place to look for. It's actually Hong Kong. There would be a lot of Hong Kong people who go there. I have been in front of the mall, but I have not been inside the mall, I must admit.
Was it too many people? You couldn't get in?
Yeah, I was actually going to another mall. But there's, of course, a lot of Hong Kong people that go every weekend to Shenzhen across the border because goods and services are much cheaper there. And they would be one of the constituents that populate that mall every weekend.
But it just reminds you of the sheer numbers when it comes to mainland China.
Yeah, exactly.
We tend to talk about weak consumer spending at the moment, but then if you go to some of these malls, you just see how much purchasing power there still sits within the country.
Yeah, it's fairly incredible sometimes. That's right.
Now, here's another statistic, sticking with China. Robots on the rise. And you're saying here that China has filed about 6,000 humanoid robot patents since 2020. And that is more than 4 times the US. What's going on there?
Yeah, so this I think is interesting because in humanoid robots, it seems the US has taken the lead, but China is really catching up. And there are now humanoid robots. You can buy them at a fraction of the price in the US. They seem to be pretty good. There was some, I think there was some sort of running competition earlier this year and football matches. And people laughed a bit about it. Oh, they're not really so good. But this is just to train these robots, right? And so you got to look a couple of years ahead. So they're really trying to catch up there. And there seems to be a lot of innovation going in there. Insofar that's reflecting
that reminds me also, it's not just humanoid robots, it's also dogonoid robots. Because, dogonoids.
Right.
Because at the HSBC's Shenzhen conference in September, we had a display of dog robots.
Yep.
And they dance in unison and they can talk and, I guess, sing.
That's right. So that's not something that I would personally be looking for because I don't need a dancing robot in my house. But industrial robots, but also think about support in an aging society. There's actually very productive use to these things. And I guess actually dogs as well. People sometimes look for companionship, right?
Yeah, and this is, I guess, the cute end of the spectrum when it comes to robots, because when you look at industrial robots, China last year in 2024 installed more industrial robots than the entire rest of the world combined.
Industrial robots that are really ahead of anybody else.
Yeah, and they now have
Automation.
more industrial robots per worker than you find in Japan or Germany or even the U.S. So this image of a Chinese factory being full of workers who stitch things together, that may have been true up until 5 years ago. Today, actually, the average Chinese factory is more automated than the average American factory
Absolutely.
is.
Absolutely.
So there's another great stat. But I wanted to move on. Here is one, and you, of course, look at the equity markets, and so equity returns over time is something you're drawn to. But you make the comparison between Google and something called ICTSI. Explain to us what that is.
Yeah, so ICTSI is a company that very few people in the world would know. It's a Philippine port operator. So they have ports in the Philippines, in Southeast Asia, but also in Ecuador, in South America, and all kinds of places. And they manage these ports. These people do this extremely well. Global trade has, of course, helped as well. But since Google listed, and that was in 2004, this company was listed already at the time. If you look at the share price performance, it has massively outperformed Google. And Google itself has done phenomenally well. But people wouldn't know this company. And this is once again to show that very often we talk about Asian stock market and say, they haven't done so far this year. But it's such a diverse sort of universe, and that there are interesting corners of companies that you really need to dig up. And then you end up with, for example, a port operator that over the last 25 years has perform better than some of the biggest companies
Herald,
on the planet.
I got to tell you, there's only one problem here. You should have told me that in 2004, not in 2025.
Well, this is why you need to read our research now, because we tell you now what's going to happen in the next 25 years.
But this port operator is interesting, and I think you pick on a really interesting kind of comparison here, because Google, of course, is now benefiting from AI. It's at the edge of sort of what's technologically possible. It's a top tech company. ICTSI is a port operator, as you say, but it's even is more niche than that, because it's a port operator that really goes into other emerging markets, goes into secondary ports very often. Yes. And so what this highlights is that this is a company that benefits from the trade between emerging markets. It's sort of found a very particular niche. And so I think the broader story here is that, yes, it's amazing what's going on the top end of tech, but also there's so much more energy, economic energy is being unleashed in the global south and trade between emerging markets. And that certainly is something that has boomed in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, here's another stat, and now we go back to mainland China and Hong Kong, because the market capitalization, that's the value of all the stocks being listed there, that has done very, very well over the past year. Since August 24, in fact, it's increased by $6.9 trillion US. Why is that a significant number?
That's significant. Just to take a step back, 6.9, so say $7 trillion US. That's a lot, right? So the increase in the market value in China, this is the size of the Indian market in total, the total size of India. So in China, we've just added on an Indian market. This is just, again, what you said earlier on. In China, these numbers are sometimes just so big. And India is a sizable market. It's just astonishing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It reminds me of another statistic, by the way. Now, this is an economic statistic, not an equity statistic, so you might need to pay some attention. The current difference in size between the Chinese economy and the Indian economy is about $15 trillion US, which is enormous, right? That's just the size of the economies. And that's roughly equivalent to the European Union in terms of the difference. Yeah. Now, we're very optimistic about India's growth prospects. And let's say they grow over 7% over the next 10 years. And let's say China slips and grows only by 3.5% on average over the next 10 years.
So India would double, actually, in the next 10 years. Yeah,
it might double. Yes, it might double. But what would be the difference in size between China and India in 10 years' time.
Oh, you would think they would almost catch up, right?
Well, actually, it turns out China is going to be 2 trillion, even larger than India. And that's the law of large numbers. That is, even if you
Because
grow
the 3%
more slowly,
over a very large number
it adds much more
more
GDP.
than the
ultimately.
7% over a smaller number. Of course.
Yeah, and that logic explains also why it's so hard to catch up globally in economic terms. Is why it's hard for even the mainland Chinese economy to catch up to the United States. Because, even though the United States grows much more slowly than China does, even today, the U.S. just adds more GDP every single year. And that's why, yes, you can be bullish on India, but China is really enormous in terms of size.
Yes.
Herald, fascinating as always. These are, again, great stats. We just touched on a few of many you dug out here. And this is obviously a
in
series.
2026
we talked about these some more amazing stats from the equity world from Herald van der Linden.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Fred.
Well, dear listeners, all good things must come to an end, and we're going to have to wrap things up. Thank you for joining us under the Banyan Tree, and we'll be back with our final episode of 2025 next week.
That's right. In the meantime, give our sister podcast, The Macro Brief, a listen for the latest economic trends shaping investments around the world. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining us at HSBC Global Viewpoint. We hope you enjoyed the discussion. Make sure you're subscribed to stay up to date with new episodes.